Welcome to this video on the topic of narcissism. Why we believe narcissists. I want to share some lessons I'm learning while I'm healing myself. Sometimes I ask myself, how did I believe all that again? How did I fall for those stories? Those explanations, those truths that were not true? And the answer is something deeper. I am discovering that it's far more than tender and far less self-blaming than I once imagined. Today, as I speak of this, I'm reminding myself of this truth. Narcissists are not always lying maliciously. Many times they are what we call as confabulating. What does that mean? They are trying to fill in the blanks in their own mind, stitching together pieces of time they cannot remember, sensations they cannot hold, emotions that they cannot regulate. And this was my biggest shift. They're not just lying to me, they are lying to themselves first. And the tragedy is that they deeply believe their own stories. Yeah. Usually people make videos about narcissists being evil. Actually, they're miserable people at the end. So the lesson one is narcissists don't remember the way we do. Narcissists and borderline personality people, they live with a constant what they call as a micro disassociation. They have like a tiny gaps in memory, tiny disappearances of self hundreds of times in a day. In fact, I've been learning about this. These gaps, it creates anxiety, and also it's because of a fragile sense of identity. They do that to cope. The mind quickly fills the missing pieces with guesses that feel logical, familiar, and emotionally protective. So that filling in is what is called as confabulation. It looks like lying from the outside. It sounds like lying. It feels like lying. But inside their mind, it is a desperate attempt to hold themselves together. And when they speak these confabulations loud, they sound absolutely convinced. And that conviction is why we believe them. There's a sense of innocence, like a child, emotionally immature, in other words. So lesson number 2, we believe them because our nervous system wants safety. It's more about us at the end of the whole topic here. When a narcissist tells a story with certainty, we absorb it. Why? Because certainty calms the nervous system, especially when we are trauma bonded. Trauma bonding is a huge topic. When we are trauma bonded, especially when we're scared of losing the person, losing them, losing their connection, especially when we want the relationship to work, their confidence, it creates a feeling of maybe I am wrong. Maybe they're right. Maybe this is the truth. Of course, this is karmic as well. That doesn't happen to everyone exactly. And then our own brain does something called confirmation bias. We filter out everything that contradicts the story because the story feels safer than the truth. So this is why this Professor Vaknin often speaks about the shared fantasy. So it's not one hand cannot clap. You need two hands, the narcissist and the codependent. Okay, lesson number 3. Their repetition of whatever it is that they're saying becomes our reality. That's why we are more affected than the narcissists. So narcissists, they repeat their confabulations. You said this, that didn't happen, you're remembering it wrong, you misunderstood, you don't understand me, I never said that. Familiar with those phrases? Over and over and over until our brain starts to accept it. It's a phenomena called the Illusory Truth Effect. Anything repeated often enough starts to feel true, especially if we have some inner work, shadow work that needs to be done. and we are wounded, it's stronger. So that's not stupidity, it's not weakness, it's neurobiology, if you want, from a scientific point of view. Our brains are designed to prioritize familiarity over accuracy. That's the emotional world. Emotional world has its own reality, in other words. All right, moving on to lesson number 4. The most painful part. We wanted to believe them. We wanted to believe them because believing them meant certain things. So what are those certain things? Number 1, relationship is still intact. We don't want it to be affected. Second is love is still possible. Connection hasn't been lost. Next is the fantasy is not collapsing. We don't want to let go. The chaos can be avoided. I can get just the good part of it. The abandonment won't happen today. See? So sometimes we choose the comforting lie over the brutal truth because our inner child still hopes that love will finally become safe. The fantasy, the shared fantasy realm. It's not because we are blind. We may be most intellectual person. It's because we are human and we have these codependent tendencies or trauma bond or some karmic layers. Lesson number 5. They are defending their identity, not manipulating ours. This part softened something inside me when I understood the actual background story of narcissism and why they act the way they act. It softens, but the snake is a snake. But still, the narcissist does not confabulate to manipulate. Not necessarily. They confabulate to survive because they are wounded people. Wherein a psychopath, he or she lies to gain advantage. A narcissist, they confabulate to avoid the collapsing of themselves, the internal of themselves. So their story is their lifeline. And if we challenge that story, they experience it as a threat to that entire self. So they have a collapse, a narcissistic collapse, the injury. So that's why disagreements turn into explosions. Why truth turns into war. Why your memory becomes the enemy. Yeah, our memory becomes the enemy here in the relationship. They're defending their inner world. And we are defending reality. And both cannot exist together. Just cannot. So therefore, the lesson number 6 here is once we commit to their version, we lose our own because it's not possible to exist. This is where the real wound happens. When we accept their confabulation, then we slowly silence our intuition. We distrust our own memory. We're compromising our sense of dignity. And then we question our own sanity. And then we shrink our voice, numb our instincts. So that's our part of the reaction and the shared fantasy. We begin living in their version of reality and abandon our own. So this is how the gaslighting works without intention, right? It's not always premeditated. It's actually but of course, the effect is the same. They disappear, you remain. That's essentially what happens. All right, lesson number 7. Healing begins when I take my reality back. That's the only way. It's not possible to heal unless we take back our reality. Yeah, that is a lot of work. And as I speak this again, I'm reminding myself gently, my memory is not wrong. My intuition is not wrong. My perception is not wrong. My body is not wrong. I was not crazy. You can tell these things to yourself to bring yourself back to your reality. I am not weak. I'm not stupid. I'm not foolish. I was trauma bonded. It's very important to identify that, but don't have to remain trauma bonded. That's a separate story. I was hopeful and I was loving. I was loyal. I was human. And now I'm learning how to be loyal to myself. See, misplaced loyalty is also a big trouble. So I'm learning to honor my truth. My body knew long before my mind could know and admit, right? You have this intuition. No, no. I am reclaiming my story, even if someone else insists that theirs is the only truth. All right. In conclusion, these are some things that you can whisper to yourself if you want to come back to being sane. Whisper this to yourself. If I ever doubt myself again, if I ever feel pulled back into someone else's version of reality, I want to remember this. They were not lying to destroy me. They were confabulating to protect themselves. But I no longer have to protect their story at the cost of my own. My healing begins the moment I choose truth, not their truth, not the fantasy truth, not the shared fantasy truth, but my truth. You need to be honest and you need to be sincere in order to have the right version of your truth. Because my reality, your reality, deserves to exist. Your voice deserves to be heard. And your story deserves to stand without being rewritten by someone else's wounds. So that would be the real beginning of surrender, real beginning of handing it over to the Lord. Because we can't hand over to Lord unless we are at least somewhat standing in the space of being truthful to ourselves, being integrated, being of integrity to yourself. So I hope these lessons helped you. Let me know what you think. Thank you very much for your attention.